We had nothing to do. Absolutely nothing. The kind of boredom that sits on your chest like a brick and makes every minute feel like an hour. It was the dead middle of summer in Crestwood, a small town on the edge of the Ozark National Forest in Arkansas, and the thermometer outside my bedroom window had crawled past 105 degrees by noon. The air was thick enough to chew. Every surface was hot to the touch. Even the dog had given up and was lying flat on the kitchen tile like a fur rug, panting with his tongue hanging out sideways. My two best friends were sprawled across my room, doing their own versions of nothing. Tyler was draining a warm bottle of Gatorade that had been sitting on my nightstand since yesterday. Jake had his face buried in his phone, thumbing through the same 3 apps in a cycle that had been going on for at least 40 minutes. And me, well, I was staring out the window at the big walnut tree in our front yard, trying to memorize it. My parents had told me that fall they were going to have it cut down. The roots had been slowly cracking the foundation of the house for years, and Dad had finally had enough. "That tree's gotta go," he'd said, waving his hand like he was sentencing it to death. And it bummed me out more than I expected. That tree had been there my entire life. I'd climbed it, fallen out of it, carved my initials into it. So I was trying to get a good, long, last look. Tyler glanced over and caught me doing my sad little window routine. "Dude," he said, "can we please go do something? I'm literally dying." That woke Jake up from his phone trance. "Yeah, seriously. Let's ride." Ride where? The question was fair. We'd exhausted every option within biking distance over the past week. The creek was too low to swim in. The skate park was closed for repaving. The gas station had banned us after the incident with the ice machine, which honestly wasn't even our fault. "The forest," Jake said, without even looking up from his phone. "It's shady in there, way cooler than out here. We can hit the fire road and see how far it goes." Tyler was in before the sentence was finished. And honestly, the idea of trees and shade and wind sounded like paradise compared to sitting in my room watching the wallpaper sweat. So we were going. Bikes or motors? Motors. Now, we didn't have motorcycles, exactly. What we had were mountain bikes, with small gasoline engines bolted onto the frames. Tyler's uncle had helped us build them out of lawnmower parts and duct tape, and a level of mechanical optimism that probably should have gotten us all killed. But they worked, mostly, and in weather like this, the wind they generated at full speed was the closest thing to air conditioning we had. Within half an hour, the 3 of us were gathered in front of my house, engines idling, goggles on, ready to go. I'd eaten a handful of plums from the tree out back in lieu of actual lunch, which was a decision my stomach would make me regret later. Tyler and Jake said their mums had forced them to eat dinner first, which explained why they'd taken so long. "Let's go." We kicked into gear and tore down the dirt road, the little engines buzzing like angry hornets. The heat was oppressive, the kind that makes the air shimmer above the asphalt and turns everything past 50 feet into a wavy mirage. Not a soul outside. The whole town had retreated indoors. Even the birds had shut up. But as we got closer to the tree line, to the point where the dirt road narrows and the canopy starts to close overhead, we were stopped by an old man. He'd come out of nowhere, just stepped out of the brush at the roadside, like he'd been waiting. He was thin, weathered, wearing faded overalls and a cap that might have been white 20 years ago. His face was deeply lined, and his eyes were sharp and clear in a way that didn't match the rest of him. "You boys headed into the forest?" he asked, his voice flat, no emotion. Tyler nodded. The old man looked at each of us in turn, slowly, like he was reading something written on our foreheads. "I'd turn around if I were you. Ranger's been patrolling in there. You'll catch trouble." "What kind of trouble?" I asked, genuinely curious. Something about the way he said it didn't sound like a warning about park fines. It sounded like something else entirely. His expression didn't change. Just trouble. The bad kind. Stay out of those woods. And then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Just like that. Disappeared back into the brush like he'd never been there. Crazy old coot, Jake muttered, already revving his engine. We didn't give it another thought. Not then, anyway. Though looking back, that conversation was all we talked about for the rest of the ride to the forest edge. Who was that guy? What did he mean by ranger? Why did he look at us like we were walking into a funeral? We reached the tree line, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees the instant we crossed into the shade. The Ozark Forest in summer is a cathedral, massive oaks and hickories and shortleaf pines towering 100 feet overhead, their canopy so dense that the forest floor exists in a kind of permanent twilight. The air smelled like earth and leaf mold and something green and alive. After the scorched wasteland of the open road, it felt like stepping into another world. "All right," Tyler announced, grinning. "Tag race. Through the woods, follow the fire road. Last one back buys everyone cold drinks. Ready?" Wait, does anyone actually know where this road goes? I asked, because somebody had to be the responsible one. "I do," Jake said with complete confidence. His confidence did not reassure me because Jake's sense of direction was famously terrible. He'd once gotten lost in a Walmart. But the other two were already lining up, so I swallowed my objections and pulled up to the start. "Go!" We launched down the fire road, engines screaming, tires throwing up plumes of red dust. The forest blurred past on both sides, green walls of undergrowth, flashes of sunlight through the canopy, the smell of hot engine oil mixing with pine sap. It was exactly the kind of reckless, stupid, glorious fun that makes you feel immortal when you're 15 and haven't yet learned that you're not. We must have covered a few miles when everything changed. A sound cut through the engine noise. Faint at first, so faint that I thought it was just the wind in the trees, or a bird, or my imagination processing the adrenaline. But it came again, and this time, it was unmistakable. A scream. A woman's scream, coming from somewhere deep in the forest to our left. Not a shout or a yell, a scream. The kind of sound that human beings only make when something terrible is happening to them. All three of us stopped, engines off. The silence of the forest rushed in to fill the gap, and with it, the echo of that scream, fading between the trees like smoke. "You heard that, right?" Jake said quietly. He was pointing into the dense undergrowth off the road, where the light gave way to shadow and the spaces between the trees narrowed to nothing. "Yeah." Tyler's voice had lost its grin. "Someone's in trouble." "We should get adults," I said immediately. "We should ride back to town and—" "Dude, don't be a wimp." Tyler was already swinging his leg off the bike. "What if someone's hurt? What if they can't wait? Come on. We check it out, and if it's bad, we leave and get help. Deal?" Before I could argue, the scream came again. Closer this time, but fainter somehow, as if whoever was making it was losing the strength to keep calling for help. "Fine. But if anything looks wrong, we leave immediately. No arguing." We pushed our bikes off the road and into the woods, weaving between the trunks. The undergrowth was thick, honeysuckle and green briar and tangles of Virginia creeper that grabbed at our wheels and ankles. The deeper we went, the darker it got. The canopy above was so thick that the afternoon sun was reduced to scattered coins of gold on the forest floor, trembling with every breath of wind through the leaves. I noticed the screaming had stopped. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. No birds, no insects, just the creak of branches overhead and the soft crunch of our tires on dead leaves. Tyler and Jake were handling it better than I was. They were even cracking jokes, something about horror movies and the guy who always dies first. I was not reassured. The silence felt wrong. The kind of wrong that presses against your skin and makes the hair on your arms stand up. And then we came to the clearing. It was maybe 30 feet across, roughly circular, with a fire ring made of blackened stones in the center. Thin smoke was still rising from the coals. Someone had been here recently. Very recently. Near the fire ring, lying face down on the packed earth, was a young man. He wasn't moving. He wasn't breathing. Even from 10 feet away, I could see that his body was wrong. Limbs bent at angles that didn't match the skeleton underneath. The stillness of something that wasn't sleeping, but had stopped. To the left, near a small two-person tent, a woman was kneeling on the ground. She was bent over the body of another young man, and she was crying. Great, heaving, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. This was the sound we'd heard. This was the scream that had pulled us off the road and into the trees. The scene looked like the aftermath of a disaster. A bear attack, maybe, or a fight that had gone catastrophically wrong. 2 young hikers, dead or dying, and a woman in hysterics. "Hey!" Jake called out, stepping forward. His voice was tense but steady. "Are you okay? Do you need help? We can call someone." The woman stopped crying. Not gradually, not the way a person stops when they realize someone is there and tries to compose themselves. She stopped like a switch had been thrown. 1 second, racking sobs. The next, absolute silence. She was still kneeling over the body, her back to us, her shoulders perfectly still. Tyler and I exchanged a look. Then the woman turned her head. Slowly. Too slowly. Like a mechanism rotating, like something that had learned the motion of turning, but hadn't quite mastered the speed at which humans do it. Her face was wrong. I'm going to try to describe this as clearly as I can, because it's important that you understand exactly what we saw. Her skin was pale, not the pallor of a person who avoids the sun, but the waxy, translucent white of something that has never been alive in the way that living things are alive. Her mouth was stretched open, not wide, but too wide. The lips pulled back far enough to expose the gums above and below the teeth. And the teeth were dark. Not brown, not stained. Dark red, the color of fresh blood, as if she'd been biting into something raw. But it was the eyes that destroyed every rational thought in my head. The sockets were there, the shape, the brow ridge, the lashes, but inside them, where eyes should have been, there was nothing but raw, red, wet meat. Gouged hollows, ragged at the edges, with blood still seeping from the tissue and running in dark lines down her cheeks like tears painted by the devil. She spoke, and her voice was not a woman's voice anymore. It was layered, a human frequency over something deeper, something that resonated in the bones. "You killed them." "What?" Jake started. "Why did you disturb my home?" She rose from her knees, and the motion was too fluid, too fast, like a marionette pulled upright by invisible strings. "These are my chambers, my resting place." She screamed. Not a human scream. The sound a mountain lion makes when it's tearing into prey. A raw, shredding shriek that split the air and hit every nerve in my body like a cattle prod. Birds exploded from the canopy. Something heavy crashed through the undergrowth to our left. I wanted to tell the others to run, but my voice was gone. The sound had stolen it, wiped the words from my throat as if they'd never been there. I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. But I didn't need to speak. Tyler and Jake were already moving. They threw themselves onto their bikes with the desperation of people who have suddenly understood, with complete and total clarity, that they are about to die. I was right behind them. Pedals spinning, engine kicking, rear tire fishtailing on the dead leaves. As the bike lurched forward and the forest began to blur past, I made the mistake of looking back. She was running. Not on two legs like a person, though she had two legs. The motion was wrong. Too fast, too low. Her body angled forward like a sprinting animal, her arms pumping at her sides, her bare feet slamming the ground with a force I could hear over the engine. And her face. That face with the empty, bleeding sockets and the red-toothed mouth stretched in a grin that went beyond madness into something ancient and inhuman, was locked onto us, tracking us, gaining. I have never pedaled so hard in my life. The engine was screaming, the tires were barely gripping the forest floor, branches were whipping my face and arms, and the only thought in my head was a loop of two words. Faster. Faster. We burst out of the tree line and into the open field like corks from a bottle. The heat hit us like a furnace blast, but for once the sun was welcome. The most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We kept going, engines maxed out, not looking back, not slowing down for 2 full minutes before Tyler's bike sputtered and he pulled to a stop. We stood there, straddling our bikes, chests heaving, eyes darting in every direction. The field was empty. The tree line was still. The road stretched behind us, flat and empty, shimmering in the heat. Nobody was following us. We stood there for a long time, waiting for the shaking to stop and the ability to form sentences to return. When it did, we didn't discuss what to do next. We rode straight home, walked straight inside, and told my parents everything. My mom and dad listened with the expression parents get when they're trying to decide if their kid is telling the truth or trying to get attention. Tyler and Jake stood next to me, filling in the details I missed, correcting me when I got something wrong, their voices overlapping in their urgency. Then my dad held up his hand. "Hold on. What were you doing in the forest?" "Riding. Just riding." "Are you sure you didn't imagine this? All three of you?" "Dad, no." He looked at us for a long moment. His expression was the one he uses when he's about to say something you won't like. "I'm going to make a phone call, and if you three made this up to mess with me, you're spending the rest of the summer with your noses in textbooks. All three of you. I'll call your parents myself." He picked up the phone. We heard him talking, and the moment I caught the words, "County Sheriff," I knew he was taking it seriously. The police came. They went into the forest. They found the campsite. They found the tent. They found 2 bodies, 2 young men, both dead, both bearing injuries consistent with what we'd described. They did not find the woman. Not in the clearing, not in the surrounding woods, not on the fire road, not anywhere. The search teams brought dogs, and the dogs tracked a scent from the clearing into the deep forest, then lost it. Like whatever had left those tracks had simply stopped existing. The case is still open. The 2 dead hikers were identified, college students from Missouri on a summer trip. The cause of death was listed as animal attack, species undetermined. There was no mention of a woman in the official report, but we know what we saw, all 3 of us. Tyler still won't go into any forest. Jake sleeps with the light on. And me, I see that face every time I close my eyes. The empty sockets, the red mouth, the way she moved, like something wearing a human shape but running on different software. The old man at the road tried to warn us. He didn't say ranger. He didn't mean a park employee. He meant something else. Something that lives in those woods and doesn't want visitors. Something that has been there a very long time. If you're ever in the Ozarks and an old man tells you not to go into the forest, listen. Because whatever we saw in that clearing is still out there. And it's still waiting.